I'd like to say thanks to NDC Oslo and thank you to our sponsors today. My name is Christina Aldan on Twitter and Instagram. I am Lucky Girly Girl. If you wanted to continue the conversation online, it's #LuckyUX. Design must seduce, shape, and more importantly, evoke an emotional response. I love this quote from April Greenman. She's a designer. If we were to define user experience, it is an international standard. It's a person's perceptions and responses that result from the use or anticipated use of a product, system, or service. There is a difference between user interface and user experience. Dane Miller sums this up really well. The UI is the saddle, the stirrups, and the reins. The UX is the feeling you get being able to ride the horse and rope your cattle. Here are some examples. The UI is the app icon on your smartphone. The UX is how pleasurable it is for clients to press the icon, their response time, and also how often they press the icon. Another example, the UI is a newsletter system that you use to communicate with your clients. And the UX is the client's emotional response, how often they engage, how long it takes them to reply to you. And there are multiple influencing factors when we speak about user experience: the system, the user, and the context of use. All of these things are the resultant emotional response to your brand. And the different elements to user experience: marketing, branding, visual design, usability. So why is it important? Well, we want to create services and products that are simple, that are valuable, and are effective. Because as designers and architects of the future, we have an opportunity to play a powerful role in constructing reality and improving humanity's experience on this planet. Design can be reactionary, responding only to current conditions, or it can be visionary by presenting solutions to problems yet undefined. I'm just kidding, everybody. I'm not going to make you sit through an entire hour of this presentation. But I think I made my point. Your user experience is included at every level of your business. Your products, your services, your employees, your interactions with your brands. I represent 5 brands. For most of you, this is the first time that you've ever seen me today. How was your first user experience with those 5 brands? My name's Christina Aldan. I'm Lucky Girly Girl on Twitter and Instagram, and I'd love it if we continue the conversation on Twitter with #LuckyUX. Thanks so much, NDC Oslo. This is my first year here. It's fantastic. It's an amazing conference, and I'm really glad to be invited. Thanks so much to all of our sponsors. So, user experience, it creates life experience. And life experiences are what it's all about, right? A lot of people talk about, money's everything. I'm all about creating awesome experiences. That's how we do it in our family, and that's how I do it in my work. That's how I do it in my teams. User experience creates life experience, and people are not remembering this. I think that sometimes we think that it's just the interface, right? It's just the icon, or it's just the website. And that's not true, because your user experience, people are engaging at every single touch point of your brand. So we're going to talk about that today. If you have any questions, please interrupt. Please ask questions. I'm an interrupter. I get excited about things and I like to ask questions. So, creating a seamless shopping experience, engaging with your brand right up to the point that people put the money in your bank. It's got to be seamless and it's got to be a pleasurable, pleasant experience. So let's talk about why people engage. All their values, their emotions, go back. Their values, their emotions, their motivations, all of that sums right up in this teeny tiny little window for user experience. Oftentimes people think about values, and sometimes we include motivations too, but we're not thinking about the emotions when we're talking about that. I speak a lot about emotional intelligence. That's a whole different talk. But I'd like to make sure that as we're talking about this today, you're thinking about the user experience as the emotions at all the different touch points of your brands, your products, your services. So where do they engage? Phone calls, online, social media, in meetings, with swag, right? How many people have been in the conference and you picked up a jinky pen that doesn't work and you're like, oh, these guys, and throw the pen out, right? Because you want to make sure that every single touch point with your brand, with your logo, with your products, with your services is pleasurable. And even your swag, even your employees, even at conferences, these are all various touch points that people have opportunities to engage with your brand. So make sure that those user experiences are pleasant. Here are the different elements. We're going to talk about these today, and then I have a few little examples and suggestions for resources. But, a lot goes into it. A lot goes into the user experience. And so let's just talk about the first one here, brand identity. Business culture, your core values, brand messaging, your logo design. So who here has specified core values at their company? You have them, you're an owner, you're a manager, you're an employee, okay, so about half of us. And who here can recite them? Who knows them all right offhand? Nobody? No? A few? Yes? So, here's the thing. Core values tell people what your company's all about. They tell people the story of your brand. They tell people what your top priorities are. And, how those core values are expressed, they come through every little touch point of your brand. So let's talk about core values a little bit. Here's a great example from Dartmouth College. They have 3 main core values that they focus on: results orientation, donor focus, and teamwork. Now, they have a few other little subcategories that go under that, but it's very, very simple. If it doesn't fall into this, then it's probably not going to be a good fit for Dartmouth. Everything that they do focuses around these core values. Here's another example at Zappos. I'm from Las Vegas, and in Las Vegas, we have Zappos headquarters. They have 10 core values. Now, I think 10 is a little bit overkill, but I'll tell you what, every single employee at Zappos, they all know what these core values are. They can all recite them because they're on the wall, because they're in their meetings, because it's how they do business, it's how they treat their employees, it's how they communicate with people, and their customer service. They're excellent at customer service. So Zappos does core values really, really well in that at every single level of their business, these core values are expressed. Here's another great example. Quicken Loans is obsessed with finding a better way. And so for our clients, our communities, our team members, we're obsessed with finding a better way. That's their core value. And look, it shows. You can go to any Glassdoor. This was taken from a Great Place to Work. Every single one of these, across the board, 97, 98, 94, 90, because their employees are super happy. Quicken Loans treats their employees very well. They treat their customers very well. I am a customer. I have some of my best friends who are lead engineers at Quicken Loans, and they do an amazing job at illustrating their core values consistently throughout their brand. Even when we had a problem as a customer, instantly their leaders, their management team, their C-level team got on the phone with us and corrected the errors with our mortgage. These guys are doing a terrific job in the way that they support their culture within and also without, internally and externally. And the ratings are like this across the board consistently. This is my cell phone number. If anybody wants, I have an example of some core values tests that you can test at your company to see if your people actually know your core values and how well you're doing. So if you guys want the information, I also can give you a copy of my slide deck, and I have some other resources that I can send you. So if you want to text me, let me know. It's interesting to think about when people think they have core values, but just having them in a little handbook on that first day where people sign off and they say, oh yeah, we got core values, we're good, we're great. People don't think a lot of the time about how they're also living those core values and emoting them throughout their brand. And consistency is what makes or breaks that, right? So having the same brand message at every single touch point of your brand, your logo, your products, your website, your social media, your ads. They used to tell us in marketing, I own a digital advertising agency, they used to tell us that people had to see things 7 times before it sinks into our skulls, right? Of those 7 times, we'll ignore it 4 of those times. So 7 times. But now with digital advertising and all of this stuff that we're constantly being distracted, 21 times. So people have to see it 21 times before it actually sticks in their brain. So make sure that that consistency is ongoing throughout. And here are some examples. Google, one of their core values. It's best to do one thing really, really well. So what do? They do one thing really, really well. That's what they started with. So they just have a very, very simple, plain search bar. Very simple. Dell, one of theirs, is we strive to make sure that everyone in any environment can take advantage of technology. And we're constantly curious. We never stop trying to get smarter, to find smarter ways to get things done. So, they instituted the bring your own device policy, right? Bring your own device to work. And they wanted everybody to have access to whatever kinds of technology they used at home and at work. IBM is innovation that matters for a company and for the world. So what did they bring us? Watson. In so many of these brands, we're seeing at all the various touch points how they're illustrating their core values. For Rackspace, results first and substance over flash. So, they focus on speed. They focus on speed over fancy, shiny things. And of course, Zappos, back in Las Vegas, what they do, their whole thing is about treating their culture and their customers well so that everybody's having fun. And I'll tell you, on any given day in downtown Las Vegas, if you're sitting at a coffee shop or you're hanging out, you never know what's going to come bursting out of the Zappos door, whether they're having a parade or whether they're having drone races or they're having cardboard boat races. Like, you just never know what's going on. But it's always a party over there because they take really good care of their customer service department, their programmers, and also their customers. So let's talk about this next element, the user interface. So what are some types of different user interfaces? Can anybody let me know? Mobile apps, websites, conferences. Conferences are a user interface, as I illustrated at my first 3 minutes, probably the worst 3 minutes of NDC in your experience so far. But I'd just like to, everyone just think about what kind of message you're giving the world at any given moment, at all these various touch points and user interfaces. So we have, different questions that we can ask as we are developing our user interfaces. Is it simple to use? I do things like show my mom websites or, go talk to my aunt about what do you think about this ad, because they have this fresh eyes, and they're not techies, and they're not in advertising. And so I like to get their opinion as well on what their experience is with the interface, whatever that it is that we're building. And remember, a confused mind says no. So if it's not easy, if it's not a seamless experience right from the start all the way to the bank account, a confused mind will they'll leave if there are too many options or if it's too difficult. Is there an easy conversion? Lead them down a nice, easy path towards the conversion goal on your website, through your app, through the meeting, through the sales pitch. And the customer service. Can customers easily engage with this customer service department? Are your customer service reps empowered with the tools that they need to give good customer service, or do things bottleneck? Sometimes they'll bottleneck with managers if they're always constantly coming to the manager to ask for permission. What do I do about this? How do I do that? The customer service is really important, and Zappos figured that out well because they win great awards for customer service. Market research. Market research includes a lot of different elements. Some examples of market research metrics are surveys. You could do focus groups sometimes, and they don't even have to be difficult. You could just go grab a group of people that are within your range. I lived in LA for a little bit. What I'd find is Craigslist ads. People just pop up Craigslist ads and say, hey, we need a focus group for this. If you fit this demographic, then come on down on Friday, and we're going to ask you to test some things. A/B testing is something that we use in my field, where, even if you have two ads where you change a picture, it'll be the same exact language. It's fascinating how you can get significantly different results. Even one tiny little word that you might not think is very significant, you can change the results just by doing A/B testing and understanding what your market likes. The other thing that you can use are heat maps if you are using web or apps to see how much time people are spending, what areas they're spending most of their time. And the time spent engaged. Measuring that is also important, especially if you do things like videos. If people are only getting through the first 10 seconds of your video, or if they're barely getting through the first 2 minutes of your presentation at NDC Oslo before they walk out. I haven't had anyone walk out yet, but... and interviews. So interviews are another good idea. I had a girlfriend who went out and started her own business, and it was just really simple. She picked out her focus group, her target market, and she just started scheduling interviews. And she interviewed like 100 people, and she gathered a lot of really good market research before she launched. And then, of course, she did the other things as she was building out her products with surveys and focus groups, things like that. The next element that I want to talk about is, who? Who is going to help out with this? I find that generalists make really good people to fill out these positions because they know just enough a little bit about everything to be dangerous, but not like a specialist who's very, very linear. By definition, specialists keep getting better and better and better and better at one thing, right? And so having an overseer, a creative director that's a generalist, is a good move because, when they're multi-specialists and they can talk to the project manager and the developers and the front end and the managers and the salespeople. User experience designers, same thing. Having a generalist in this position is going to be much more beneficial to you than having a specialist in this position who often, they're very, very focused at what they do and they're very excellent at what they do in that position. But having a generalist is going to be much more significant for you. So, you could see with all these different parts, we've got programming, interaction design, interface design, information design, motion, sound, graphic design, written. You could see with all of these layers, all of these different layers, having one person who knows a little bit, who can go between the layers, is going to be more beneficial to your team than having just a specialist who only knows one thing. And so all of those things, they add up to the user experience, the emotional response, the brand engagement. This is how we get loyal clients. So again, resources. If you're a manager and you want to test how well this is working in your company, send me a text. The other thing, if you're a manager, sometimes we might have a tendency to shut people down, right? We're busy, we're moving forward. People might come to us and say, hey, I've got this idea, I want to do this. Oh no, we already tried that. And who knows, maybe they might have a new twist on an old idea. I like to encourage people to have a better communication pattern than just shutting people down right away, because what happens is after a while, if you hear that enough times, your team starts to get a little bit disgruntled, and then there's going to be less innovation. And we see this as companies get larger and larger and larger. I work a lot with startups and small companies, and the passion, right, is very infectious. They get really excited in startups. But if you're a manager and you're growing and you've tried things, I like to encourage people to use a little bit different language that might still be encouraging. So instead of saying, we already tried that, say something like, I'm not convinced yet, tell me more. And of course, you can't take on every single project, but sometimes it's really easy if you're busy and people are presenting you with things, and it's easy to say, I told you about that already. No, we're not going to do it. Something like, I know we're not going to do that yet, but maybe you'd be willing to mock something up, and we can compare. Or also sometimes you just have to say no. But instead of saying that'll never work, try something like, the timing makes it wrong. It's the wrong option for us right now. It's a little more gentle, and it's a little less soul-crushing on your team, because the next time they have a great idea that might actually work, guess what? They're not going to bring it to you, right? Because it was a bad experience for them. So I'd like to encourage you to think about that, and think about the language that you're using when you're communicating with your team, when you're developing new products, when you're looking at the user interface, because your team members are user interface too. I mean, what would happen if you're thinking about going to a company and you see somebody at a conference and you go, hey, you work at company A, how's it going over there? And they come and go, oh my gosh, no, don't do it. No, managers over there are horrible. They stifle all your ideas. That's part of this user experience for your brand. So think about that messaging as you're putting out that information. Has anybody here used Business Model Canvas? So when I first started my business, I went out and set up this great business plan. We have SBA, the Small Business Association in the United States, and they have a great little walkthrough tutorial that walks you through this 50-page business plan that goes step by step by step by step by step. And you put all this information in there, and it has your executive summary and your projections, even though you don't have any users yet, and even though you don't really have any projections. So you come out with this big, huge document that you immediately just put off to the side and never look at again, and it's very confusing. So they came up with a very fluid motion for that, where you're constantly taking an assessment of your resources, of the tools that you have, of your partners or your collaborators, and it's a really good way to mock up your business plan as an active, live document. It's a living document, and it's constantly moving. Well, these guys, it's so exciting. They did the OS canvas, because everything is an operating system. And so what they did is, they moved it around all these different parts, the structure and space of your project, the authority and decisions, the information and communication, the meetings, the rhythm, the coordination, the people, the development. So what the Ready did is they took a survey, I think it was like 2,000 companies, and they came up with this plan so that, again, it's a fluid, moving document. So at any given moment, as you're taking features out, as you're putting features in, as you're losing a project manager, as you're coming in with a new project manager, as you adding team members or growing partners and collaborators, you have this living, working document that is always available. It works really well if you put it up on the wall so the whole entire team can see it, or you have it online so people are constantly checking it and seeing it. Instead of having some big, boring 50-page document that's off to the side somewhere, this really helps, especially for visual learners, right? As far as all of the moving parts and how they're interacting with each other and engaging with each other. It's called the OS Canvas, and I encourage people to check it out, to look at it with your next project. Another way that you can create a positive user experience is to create random acts of culture. I love this. Chuck Longenecker from Digital Telepathy, he talked about creating random acts of culture. So even if your manager and your culture is not perfect and you can't do a big overhaul, because let's face it, it takes a lot. I've spoken to some companies where it takes them about 5 years to change over their culture, 7 years to change over their culture of their company. And you can do just tiny little things, fun things. Zappos does parades. Zappos does fun little outings. You could do just, whatever fun little thing that you want to encourage your people to express their innovation, express their ideas, and interact with each other cross-departmentally. Having these things increases the user experience, the creativity. When we change our brain waves from alpha mode to beta mode, it helps our brains actually be more productive when we go back into alpha mode. So inserting all these little random acts of culture that are going to help encourage people, cause creativity, is much more beneficial. And there are a few books that have been written about company culture. So, a lot of companies like Quicken Loans that are doing cool things where they've taken away managers. Or, in the case of Holacracy, where they have different pods, and it's not necessarily a flat company, but they have flat companies too. There are all these different ways that you can structure a company and a culture to help create and cultivate more interaction, more engagement, and more creativity for creating products and services that are going to succeed. So Delivering Happiness is a great book. Connection Culture is another book that is in the culture engine. Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is like my Bible. I love this book. There are 26 traits to emotional intelligence, and they talk about awareness of self, awareness of others, your management of self, management of others, and how that is expressed at every single level of your business and of your personal life. So there's a lot around emotional intelligence that you can do to help transform things if you're having trouble in your team, if you are having difficulty or you're stuck on a project and you have your developers fighting with your project managers, fighting with your front-end designers, these things can help. And then Outliers is another really great book from Malcolm Gladwell, talking about the success of people, how individuals succeed at different levels, and what is it exactly that help them succeed and help their products go viral and help their services help the masses, reach the masses. So then, people look at me and they go, oh, Christina, no. I've read the books. I gave the books to my manager and he looked at me and he said, no, not going to do it. That's not our thing. So, I have another book that I might recommend for you. It's called Unconscious Branding. And Douglas, he says that if you want someone else to completely believe in your idea, you have to make sure that they come up with the idea themselves. And that's how you create a loyal fan. So this book talks about the best way for your boss to adopt certain ideas that, maybe in those books, or maybe in a new feature that you think is going to help your products, services run more efficiently, make the user experience better. This is a really great book because it talks about unconscious branding and how we can help other people buy into the idea by, making it their idea, making it seem like it's their idea. And then there's some language, again, I think that words are very, very powerful. And so when you're having a user experience, when you're engaging with people, with your brand, there are very simple phrases that you can practice to get them to think. And it's a formula that I use that is certain phrases. So it would be, instead of coming to your boss and saying, hey, I want to do this, I would say, hey, what would have to happen for us to do this? It's more, it gets them thinking about, oh yeah, that's a good question. Because what happens with your brain is if somebody asks you a question, it's very, very difficult for you to move on to the next thing until that question is answered first. So, it would be like, I wonder what would have to happen for X to occur. What could I say to help you approach it from X? And it doesn't really matter what X is, it's just the way that you're phrasing the question in order to get them thinking about, what it will be. And oftentimes, sometimes it will be that it's not a good idea or it's not good timing for adding the feature at this time. But, sometimes it'll be, oh yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of that. And the goal is to get their mind chewing on it, to get their mind thinking about, oh, what would have to happen for this to occur. And either way, whether they adopt the idea or don't, you'll still have better information than just being completely shut down. Another tool that I use is I agree. I agree. So something like, I know we can't do this yet, but what could I do to get us one step closer? Or you could say, I agree, and I'll add that we might also be able to, and so if people come to you with an idea or vice versa, and you shut them down right away, instantly that pushes them off. But if you say, I agree, and it breaks down that resistance, and they're going to be much more open to listening to what you have to say about adding that feature or changing up the design or whatever it is. And then so people look at me and they go, Christina, not my thing. I'm not in the business of convincing or talking, because the people at my job, no, they don't listen. And my managers just aren't interested in that. Well, may I suggest other resources for you about companies that may follow your core values and companies that do actually focus on culture at every single level of business, and companies that are doing things a little bit differently. If you look at their products, if you look at their services, if you look at their management, their employees, at every single level, people are happy. Their users, their customers, they're happy because they live their core values, and they understand that user experience is included at every single level of business. And people look at me and they go, oh, Christina, no, that's not an option. I can't go to another company. I can't talk to my managers. And, I read the books and I gave them, and they're not interested. Then, may I suggest volunteering? These are some companies that I have worked with to help me share my knowledge, share my experience, and, practice these things. So as I share, as I mentor, as I teach other people, I grow also. And if I'm not happy at my job, if I'm not happy in the workplace, then you can also go out into other places and seek out that culture that is going to be stimulating, that's going to be creative, and it's going to also help shape and shift younger kids and teach them. When I mentor, anytime at 7 to 8 people at a time, and we talk about different things at different levels of their career. When I teach them the tools that I've used and share my experiences and watch what they do with it, then I learn as well. I also have come up with a lot of collaborators, especially I ran Girls in Tech Las Vegas for a few years with my co-managing director, and those relationships put me in touch with women who I wouldn't otherwise have access to. And so we've collaborated on different projects. We've worked on different scholarship programs and different award programs together. And I've been able to connect with other women and high-level executives that weren't necessarily around because through different volunteering, I got to connect with them. And when you mentor other people and you share that information with them, it really changes the culture, and it helps feed your soul, especially if at work you're not getting that, right? And people go, no, Christina, I am not a volunteer, and I don't care, and that's not my thing, and I'm already connecting with people, and I'm fine with it. But you know what you could do is think about the time that you have. So we all have time. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. And if you're stifled at work and you're having a very difficult user experience at work and it's not working for you, I really suggest that you make notes. You work on your side projects. You talk to your friend and start that small business that you've always wanted, or build that app that you've always wanted to build. You know, even if you're really super stressed at work and you can't really get out of your job and you can't really get out of that culture, and it's been such a horrible user experience for you, you know, maybe you just sit, maybe you just breathe, maybe you just create white space. When we talk about emotional intelligence, it's interesting how our brain works. You know, we want to, oftentimes there's that fight or flight response that we have first, the amygdala. And the unfortunate part is that the amygdala gets the signals, gets the input faster than our prefrontal cortex, the cognitive mind, the cognitive brain. And so we're much more prone to react when we're unhappy, when we're stifled. That's where our creativity goes down. That's where we're exhausted. It's negative. We're complaining about work. We're complaining about our bosses or our coworkers because it's not working out. But, you know, if you even start thinking, what is possible? What would have to happen for me to be happy? What could I create? And this is really simple. Just asking those few questions every single day stimulates your brain to focus on these other parts that are possible, these possibilities of an app, these possibilities of a partnership, of a collaboration, of a new creative project that you're working on. And if you create an outlet for your ideas, you create an outlet for your creativity, you create an outlet for your frustrations, it helps balance out those feelings. So in our minds, we all have this innate natural response. It's called dimorphous expressions. We have this innate natural response in our brains to counteract whatever it is we're feeling. Right? So sometimes, I have a 5-year-old at home. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, stop that. What are you doing? And he knows he's in trouble, but he might smile. I do this. I will speak quickly, or I will be a little bit nervous and I'll laugh inappropriately. Does anybody else laugh inappropriately at times that you really probably shouldn't be laughing? Because our brains go, oh, fight or flight. And then naturally, through dimorphous expressions, this is a thing, our brains counteract that by laughing or by doing the opposite emotion of that to help balance it out. So I encourage you, if you're not happy or if you're feeling stuck or you have these feelings, to think about what's the opposite thing of that. Because once you start focusing on that, you cultivate more of that, and you cultivate more emotional intelligence, and that's where the creativity for problem solving. Somebody said earlier in one of their talks that we're not really engineers, we're problem solvers when we're developers, and so that's exactly what happens. You can't solve problems when you're in it, when you're in fight or flight mode, when you're in fear, and that's what emotional intelligence tells us. So cultivating those kinds of things is going to be a lot more helpful for you. And, I've changed my mindset. Most of us are not given those tools for managing our emotions. I know I wasn't. As I was growing up, it was children should be seen and not heard, right? So if we can cultivate these in ourselves and cultivate them in our teams, it's really interesting and fascinating at the problems that we can solve, at how creative our brains get when we put our minds together to work on these problems and kind of chew on a solution that might be best for everybody and break down exactly where in the project, where in the scope of work, at what point are things breaking down. And emotional intelligence helps us get there because when your brain is ready to receive that information and it can work on those problems and kind of chew on those problems in a positive way, you're going to be able to solve those problems better. Because remember, a confused mind says no. And if we can make it simple, if we can make it engaging, then people are going to be much more successful in all of the products and the services that they provide. So I spoke pretty quickly. That's all that I have for the talk today, but I wanted to talk about if there are any questions. Lots of times people want to know a little bit more about how they can make changes in themselves or changes in work through the existing structure that they have. Does anybody here work at a company that uses holacracy or any kind of alternative culture changes in their office? No, everybody has pretty much a set hierarchy. How many people here are independent developers? Have their own businesses? Yeah. So when we talk about working in teams, I work in different teams for nonprofits, for advisory boards, or sometimes as a consultant, we might be called in to work with an in-house team, right, just for a product launch or things like that. And so when you can think about the user experience at that level as well, it really, really helps having an outside person come in. But at the same time, if you come in and you're not really well received because you're met with resistance, that can also offer issues and problems on the project. Does anybody have any questions about user experience or company culture, core values? Okay, thank you very much.